Hey guys, we are back for another Star Wars Black Series review, taking a look today at the relatively recent Target exclusive Moloch figure. So we've got this big worm dude from Solo. Finally, I've been looking forward to this figure because I enjoyed the movie. I think the character design is pretty cool, and he's a worm. Who doesn't want a worm figure? So we've got him here in sort of standard Black Series packaging. It's a much bigger box. It's similar, but even bigger than the Gamorrean Guard packaging. You can see him there in the window. We've got some artwork down there on the side. He, of course, does not have a number. We've got a write-up and then some of that same artwork on the back as well. So let's pull him out and take a look. All right, guys, here is our Target exclusive Moloch figure out of the package, and I gotta say this is one that I'm definitely interested to take a look at because the entire concept around this particular figure and character just speaks to me. The idea of a worm, space worm dude is just fine in my book. Now, objectively speaking, this figure has some good, and it has some not as good, but we'll talk about that. So, of course, we have to take a look at articulation, and honestly, there isn't a great deal to talk about here because he's relatively unarticulated. So as far as moving this guy around, if you know anything about this particular character, you know that he is just a worm. That's not any kind of inference of anything. He is a space worm. He's in a gang called the White Worms. So it's very much true to his character that he would just be kind of an unmovable hunk of plastic. And for the most part, that is what he is. So the head is encased in, their humongous carapace-style armor that they use to be able to breathe. We've got no movement that I can find from the neck up, if you even consider it a neck. Just the head. So we do have some moving parts, but I don't consider that articulation, and I'll talk about that when we get to, more fine details on the figure itself. So I don't think there's anything up at the head, nothing rotates, nothing hinges, nothing that I can find does anything. The arm will go out, we have rotation, we have swivel at the elbow and a single jointed hinge, but you get about 90-ish, and then we've got hinges and rotation at the wrist. The waist, if you want to call it that, he does have a ball joint there so he can move forward and backwards, and then he rotates from side to side. So there is a little bit of movement, but overall he is relatively unarticulated. I'm not sure they could have done too much more to fix that because ultimately he is just a worm, so he has no legs, he doesn't have hips, he doesn't have any of the actual structure to consider when actually putting in joints. So, he moves okay, but honestly I'm a little disappointed that he doesn't move somehow a bit more. All that said, where my interests mainly lie with this figure are in the looks. Now, like I said, I really like the idea behind this character. I like his scenes in Solo. I like the whole White Worm gang thing. And this figure does a lot of good when we're talking about how he looks. So there is obviously a lot of stuff going on here. He's a quote-unquote deluxe figure. So he was a higher price point. He has more plastic. There is more sculpt. There's more paintwork going on. So we've got a nice large kind of rubbery jacket that hangs over. You could take this off if you wanted. It just sits over the arms, for, I don't know, Moloch's day off or something. Take this off if you wanted, but I think he looks kind of weird without it. The jacket has texture all over it, and there's a bit of like a white beigeish dry brushing all over it to make it look like he's a little dirtied up. We've got a holster for his gun. We've got some cabling that runs kind of down from his headpiece into his belt. We've got a bandolier here, of course, and then there's just little paint embellishments all over the figure. Of course, the big thing outside of the fact that he is a larger, not necessarily taller figure, but just a general bulkier figure, is that he does have, the base down here. So here's what he looks like on the bottom, and you can kind of get in there and see that it is sculpted all the way up. So there is sculpted detail all over his worm body. They didn't really need to do that, but of course they did it, so I'm okay with that. So if you were able to take all of this rubbery dress off, you could see all of his worm flesh if you're into that. The big thing for me outside of, what we have on the body, though, is the head, because that's really where his character comes in, where you see he's got this humongous thing on his head, and it's, kind of like a shielded carapace that sits over top of him. And the way it's explained is that they use this to breathe because they can't be out in the air, in the environment, so they use this to stay enclosed and breathe, and they're also susceptible to light as well. So that's part of their whole shtick. But we do have some moving moving parts here. As we saw in the movie, you know, this isn't actually them. They're not a robot or anything. They're a worm. So this piece pops off. You actually have to put this on. And then this piece here hinges down a bit. And all of this is sculpted very, very nicely. And we've got his kind of wormy face in there. There's some kind of griminess on the sides of the armor plating. And everything in here is kind of a metallic gunmetal with some different paint color embellishments on it. The eyes are a nice like sky blue color with some paint shading around it. So I really like the way he looks. I like the idea of this figure. This is a very Star Wars-y kind of design, something that I was really happy to see in Solo. And as far as actually using this, you know, this piece I said you have to put on. You just kind of clip it in, and then you pop the bottom piece over top of it, and he is locked and loaded and kind of ready to go. So I dig everything about the way he looks. He's just not all that articulated, but he does look really, really nice. And I think Hasbro did a pretty solid job in the sculpt department. I don't have any paint issues on my figure, and from the neck up, if that's really what you want to call it, this figure is an absolute winner for sure. Everything about that mask and that headpiece is just stellar. Now, as far as accessories goes, there are, I mean, I guess there are technically 3 in the box, because you do have to put this guy on his mask, but I don't really consider that as such. I mean, it's just an extra piece. It's not really an accessory. It's a removable part. We have 2 weapons, though. We have his little tiny little baby blaster here, which is you know, a little gunmetal with some brown on the stock, and then or the handle on the grip, and then you can just pop it in his holster there, and it sits underneath his robes. The big thing for me, as far as accessories goes, is his club or his staff, and you can't really see it in this particular figure. But I know that from seeing the shots of the actual prop, like all of the stuff on the end is like skulls and like bones and stuff like that. That's what it was embellished to be. That's the sculpt out of it. But I think they did a good job to kind of bring that through. You know, it kind of looks like there's something in here. Like it's kind of supposed to be like a tortured souls looking kind of thing, if that makes any sense to you. So we've got just kind of a brown rod with some kind of beige paint on it, but I think it looks really nice. He can hold this in either hand. He's mostly meant to hold it in his left, though. It's got a bit of a tighter grip, and of course he does have a trigger finger for the gun on his right hand. So you've got that to contend with as far as accessories goes. It's not a great deal of stuff, but it's everything this particular character needs. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this guy. He is, of course, like I mentioned, pretty under-articulated, but at the same time, is that truly a negative? He can't really do a great deal. He's a worm. He's got a big helmet on his head, and he has arms. So there's only so much Hasbro could have done, and I think they did a pretty decent job in the confines of this figure. I would always hope for a little more, but I'm okay with what we got. This guy succeeds in the looks department. That's really what I wanted. You know, I don't even have the other figures that go with him, the other Solo figures, to kind of make a scene with him. All I have him for right now is to look cool on my shelf as an alien worm guy, and if that was what I wanted, that's what I got. So all things considered, I think this is definitely a winner, and another solid entry in the Black Series Deluxe line that they're working with right now. So that's going to do it for this look at the Star Wars Black Series Target exclusive Moloch figure from Hasbro. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.